So thank you everyone for our latest guest. He's a good friend and expert in the field. I'm looking forward to the conversation. Roti Balogun, welcome to Rebels with a Heart.
It's great to be here, Derek. I've been looking forward to chatting with you and the team, and really privileged to be here. Thanks for having me.
Likewise, and you were just sharing before that you are on the road warrior track these days. Literally, you ran in or came in from a flight this morning at 5 a.m. and here we are talking. That's the life of a talent executive, so to speak, in today's day and age, isn't it?
Indeed, indeed. You gotta go out into the field. You gotta get to know your people. You gotta give them time. And, I think we've all missed being behind the Zoom screens for a while, and now we're back on the road and meeting up with our leaders and making it happen. So
Yeah,
I'm excited.
that's wonderful. Well, I'll start off with a question I often like to kind of initiate conversations with in this show, which is, what's called the Rebels with a Heart. What does that phrase mean to you? Or how would you define that in the context of your life and in your business and your role, wherever you want to kind of take that?
Yeah. Whew. I mean, look, when we connected and, the word heart was definitely the initial draw. I'm like, oh, wow, like we're talking about love. We're talking about, bringing more heart to what we do as a talent leader. But then the rebels part of it was the right twist because it felt that, it tugged at the strings of innovation, right? Tugged at the strings of disruption, right? And it really just tugged at the string of doing things very differently. So being a rebel in an environment that they embrace change or sometimes are resistance to it's a great thing to do, but doing it with the heart, with a
Yeah.
lot more empathy, and most importantly, with love, it resonated totally with my leadership style and how I'd love to
Yeah.
drive impact.
Awesome. Well, we're gonna dig into the present of what you're doing and applying that, and also where we see the future. But I'd love for you to share a bit about your story. You've had quite an amazing journey. I think you embody a rebels of the heart spirit in terms of your life and career path. Maybe just kind of enlighten the listeners a little bit on your journey and through leadership,
Yeah.
and the way that you've continued to show up in this way, and how that served you and the people that you are ultimately serving. So,
No, absolutely. So listen, I mean, it's sometimes there's a long version of the journey, and there's a short version. I think the consistency in any of the versions that I share about my journey, it's that it's been full of purpose, right? My early days, early career was this guy that was really passionate about technology, engineer by training. And then, somehow I figured that I was more passionate about the people that use the technology. And so that took me into, the human resource function and quite frankly, the different talent and learning and, HR leader roles that I've been on right across the world, actually. So,
yeah,
I'm spent quite a bit of time in the early childhood days, both in the UK, in Nigeria, where I'm from. Got a deep heart for like sustainable development and economic empowerment
yeah,
in Africa specifically. And so the corporate career and looking at internal talent development, but importantly, how that sort of impacted the roles we played in community was really, really my soft spot. And I just have been privileged to work in great organizations like Ericsson and General Electric, and more recently in the last couple of years with JPMorgan Chase, where I'm now the global head of talent. And that journey has been so far so good, exciting.
yeah,
It's technology because I've been in technology companies. It's financial services, which is massive, different,
yeah.
but it challenges me. And the people, whether in a technology company or on the financial services, are people that have a passion to grow and do good for the world. And so it's just been great to be able to sit in an
No,
important role here where I can influence change. And by the way, we are the bank for all, right?
yes,
That's change. And we are a big technology company. In fact, fun fact, we've got more technologists than Google has. So,
it's interesting.
I didn't change hearts that differently. I'm just another technology company for the future.
Yeah. So I want to continue to dig into to the roots of who you are and where you come from. I mean, what you mentioned technology was your first passion, or maybe, but what I'm hearing you say is actually it wasn't. People have been your first passion. Community has been your first passion. Whether or not you even necessarily recognize that first, that's where it came back to for you. Technology was the means by which you were made aware of that. How did you kind of end? How did you start on the path of technology? How was that kind of a rebellious path, if you will, that ultimately kind of showed you your heart, and then how you kind of piece that together through the different steps in your career, in your life?
Yeah, no, listen, I think, look, I mean, if we go way, way back, engineering or technology, I was, all the way from high school, I think I probably spent time trying to figure out how to make things and create
Yeah,
things. And so that quickly led me on the journey of, a software engineering first
yeah,
degree and a
yeah,
master's degree in software engineering. And at that point, I'm like, all right, I'm going to be the best engineer ever and,
yeah,
create all the fastest things in the world. But very quickly, I think after a couple of years,
yeah,
um, I spent an inordinate amount of time mentoring and
mm,
coaching the next generation of leaders that were
yeah,
joining the firm I was working for. And so, our leader I worked for thought, well, you seem to be doing this really well.
yeah,
And so he nudged me to really lean in to manage the graduate programs
yeah.
for the organization. That
Where did
was it.
that skill set come from? I mean, was that just an innate ability? Did you have influences in your life as you were growing up? I mean, what was that? Where did that start from?
I'll say if we went back to high school, I've always taken on leadership roles from, a little, elementary school, right? I
Yeah,
think, I was the head boy of my school. I love soccer
yeah,
and basketball when I was
yeah.
younger. And I wasn't just playing it, I was playing to lead and win. And
Okay.
so, again, I took on roles that helped me to expand on the skills of leadership on the field of
Yeah,
sport. Pulling together, when I went to university in the UK in Loughborough, and one of the roles I played was actually to bring a couple of the universities in the Midlands there up north in the UK to play together as an
yeah.
inter-university type sport. And so those social elements, those leadership elements, I think I just did a little bit more naturally.
Mm,
The influence, to your point, of my life was really my mother in
okay.
the early days. She definitely spent a lot of her professional career as a female leader in a lot of the big four firms as we describe them now. The Deloitte and the PwCs and Ernst and
Yeah.
Young. Was a senior tax leader there. She was the first female president of the Institute of Taxation back in Nigeria as well. So there are a couple of firsts and clear sort of leadership career trajectory with my mom. And a lot of that, I think I sort of leaned into in terms of
Yeah.
emulating that, as well. But yeah, I mean,
Yeah.
beyond that journey of, just sort of participating as a leader in a number of this different areas of my soft life, I
Yeah.
very quickly that as soon as I took on sort of more leadership roles in the human resource function,
Mm,
it became enabling those technology skills, but making sure that because I understood the business, because I was partnering intentionally, with business leaders, and I kind of spoke their language, right?
yeah.
It enabled them to trust me, help me to build more on the people
Yeah.
skills. And, that's, the rest is history here today.
Yeah, I mean, so I think I love these conversations because I get to learn so much about what motivates people and drives people. I mean,
Yeah.
that's pretty an amazing experience for your mother, right? I mean, first off, at a time of your age, for her to rise to that level, I mean, that requires a true kind of rebellious spirit in its own right. And I would imagine that from what our time knowing each other, that a lot of the empathy and the social cohesion aspects that you've developed do in many ways where it comes from that, as well as it sounds like some of the business acumen that you've brought forward. So I mean, like it's fascinating to see the role that that's having and playing it forward, and in terms of giving you the platform and the opportunities to identify them and take advantage of them. to serve in a different way, right?
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. And, I think some of those things that we try not to take for granted as well is that just continuous self-development and continuous aspirations to not just learn
Yeah,
on the job and with the experiences I've been privileged to be in some of these organizations, but I've also continued to invest in
yeah,
myself as well. So, further along the line, an MBA came right through,
yeah.
I did a PhD as well. And, the idea was keep learning, right? Because, ultimately it helps to take you to the next level.
And to that point, did that ambition start at a young age for you as well? Or is that something that you've cultivated over time through your investment in your education, development, and in your growth?
Yeah, look, I think I've cultivated it over time, right? I think, obviously I had a very competitive spirit
Yeah, at a young
early
age.
on, but
Yeah,
I've always found that, when I crossed into the human resource function, it was like this was engineering
yeah,
in the HR function, right? And so that led me to say, all right, so what does it mean to, push myself to learn what, an HR practitioner learns, from an academic perspective? I did that. And, I think from then, it was, more senior roles started to come, and it was, well, I needed to understand a little bit more in terms of the body language of the boardroom.
yeah,
And so, my financial dexterity had to be better. And so I did an MBA, and, the specialty though in the MBA was I focused on innovation and entrepreneurship.
okay,
And part of that was because I fundamentally believe that one of the most important skills that a leader should have is an entrepreneurial spirit.
yeah,
And so that helped me to, be a better entrepreneur. So almost in sense, creating opportunities in the organizations that I was,
right,
because I was focused on value creation. And so the MBA helped with, solidifying a little bit of the knowledge
yeah,
that I needed to do there. But also, very quickly beyond that, I realized that the real calling and the passion was to be able to lean into reforms at scale.
hmm,
And so being that corporate leader
yeah,
that sat with leaders, across the world that influenced,
yeah,
businesses and education within the context of industry. How do I bring that to bear in
yeah,
terms of sustainable development and community, like you rightly alluded to? And so I, spend a lot of time with regulators and academics, and they're like, they used to by chance call me Professor Roti, and I was like, well, I'm not
yeah,
even that. And beyond that, the right to actually be able to influence change sort of led me
yeah,
to sort of pursue the the doctorate in education,
mm,
and yeah, and still be a corporate leader, but with eye for education policy improvement.
yeah. So that brings us, it's a perfect transition back to the present, right? Because you're giving voice to that rebellion, that internal
Yeah.
rebellion, that constructive rebellion, the rebellion to make change, to make a difference, to reset, to redefine, right, what you're doing within an organization. How are you doing that in the present day at JPMorgan Chase, right? What are you
Right.
doing right now individually, and how are you reshaping the culture and the talent initiatives at an organization like JPMorgan Chase, which is an established business leader for a century, more than a century, right? And bringing it into the next century, and then simultaneously, how are you envisioning the future? Like, how is this part of your overarching story of where you're bringing your life and your career through this process? What's that vision you have? Yeah,
Yeah, no, it's a great question, because I ask myself every day, right? What my purpose is at JP Morgan Chase. And the way I describe that is, well, today the aspiration is to make love more visible at work.
yeah,
Um, and and primarily that's because of also the time that I joined the company, right? I think post
yeah,
pandemic, I was, loving it at GE. Great learning organization.
yeah,
And but crossing over to um, JP Morgan was also very intentional. JP Morgan invested in Thomas Edison.
yes,
He was a first investor.
yes,
So, there's always a connected purpose, right, into when you make that move. And so I said, well, I need to first of all go learn as to, who invested in and what's the spirit behind the investment in a great company like GE and Thomas Edison, and the founder, and what was the heart and the spirit of the people in such a great organization. So joining Air, initially I kind of also had the view of, the mafias of Wall Street, right? But the Chase brand, we're actually lead specifically within the JPMorgan Chase franchise, is the retail element, right? It's 130,000 plus employees across all our retail branches in the US with, big sort of operations and customer service teams in the Philippines and in India. And every day, just being connected to people in the front line, people that didn't leave the branches to serve our communities, to serve our people, really truly enabled to say, well, you know what, like it's a fascinating organization from the inside.
Yeah.
Being able to, shape the talent strategy for the organization of today, but also then influence what that may look like over the next couple of years. Like I teased at the start that we're becoming more and more of a technology company. So we still will have our branches. We believe that it's important to expand, but also internationally as well. We have a Chase franchise that is completely digital without any branches, right? And so how we serve our customers is evolving. I think that my priorities have always been to think about leadership first in terms of, traditionally, banking and industry leaders known as key executors, great knowledge of industry, able to, make sure that, we're around for 100 plus years. So we're definitely doing something right. But we need more innovative leaders. We need more inclusive leaders. We need more sustainable leaders, and being able to orchestrate the careers of the most senior leaders in an organization at this level means I need to be able to influence how they think about their communities, how they think about leadership, how they think about the teams they lead, with the framing of those new capabilities, right? Because it's not traditionally I don't know that we would say that banking leaders across the industry are the most innovative. It's a very heavily regulated environment. And so influencing that is really top of my strategy in terms of leadership development, understanding, first of all, self through that process, understanding how to shape a little bit in terms of how we are more thoughtful with regards to how we lead our people, especially in this times. And so if for me, if love is visible in the way I engage vulnerable leaders at that level, and how we show care for each other, and how we bring purpose to work every day, then it's the culture is right. The culture is on the right rails. And then it's easier to then start to execute on the talent strategy for the rest of the organization, right? And how we engage with diversity and inclusion, our campus programs for the next gen, a lot of that builds on from the initial thinking about the leadership.
So that I fundamentally agree with everything you shared. I think that vision that you're building on is admirable and worthy. I love the quote that you made, because you made it when we first met too, which is making love visible at work. That was kind of the calling card that you wanted to be remembered for. I mean, I have to ask the direct question: how's that going at Chase? Because I know that I can tell that you are competitive and making it happen. But let's be real. Financial services, while yes, Chase is an innovator, and that is in the kind of initial DNA, banking broadly is not a space, and business, hardcore business broadly, is not the space where typically you hear people talking about love in the context of leadership or culture building, or even client services for that matter, even though that is a place where there's a massive opportunity to transfer that experience. What's the resistance? What's the opportunity? What's the call to action for building this community around what you've been tasked to do? Because you, in many ways, have been given a monumental task to do that within the context of financial services, right? That they see it, and yet let's be real. This is not a one-man job, right?
I know it isn't, absolutely not, and I don't even claim to be able to do it by myself. I have a I
Yeah.
have a phenomenal team that, we look at each other every day and say, really and truly, what does it mean to show love in how we express ourselves to our customers,
Yeah.
right? Um, you know, I know there's been a lot of introspection even way before I got here. We are going on a journey to even rethink or reimagine the purpose of the firm as it is right now. So more to come on that in a
Yeah.
couple of months. But I feel like inviting me to join the franchise, my voice is part of what the new purpose
Yeah.
of the backpack is going to be. I've spent time, sort of reflecting on how do we make these changes every day that this massive aspiration, right,
Yeah.
is really truly embraced. And it's hard, right?
Yeah.
Um, One, because, the word love, like you said, is not always embraced in the purest of its form.
Yeah.
And so I try to always define it as, how do we push each other to be better in a more compassionate way,
Sure.
right? How do we care about each other in a way that isn't just caring as an emotional leader, right? But we're pushing ourselves to really, really, really think about the employee experience. There is no customer experience without really energizing that employee experience. And energizing the experience means that we've got to have a lot of empathy on steroids, right? When people have had to come back into work, come back into the offices, right? So, because they've been working, they never stop working, right?
Yeah.
How do we think a little bit about being more thoughtful in
Yeah.
terms of incentivizing the connections, the collaboration, the creativity that really needs to happen to continue to maintain and hopefully evolve our culture, right?
Yeah.
All of these things are hard, right?
Mm.
The barometer of measurement always
Yeah.
is not really the pulse or the engagement surveys and all that we do, is how much each person
Yeah.
that I come in contact with, my team, beyond my teams, are able to articulate how they have cared a little bit more
Yeah.
for one client at a time.
Mhm.
How, as we are in annual performance season right now,
Yeah.
expectation is for them to reflect back and say, um, as a leader, are you able to help your teams
Yeah.
understand a little bit better what their bringing purpose to work every day means, right? We've got a massive investment in our racial equity commitment.
Yeah.
Inclusion is important to us, but how do people feel like they belong here? And I'll give you an example. I love to sing,
Yeah.
right? And so, um, I've been a couple of leadership retreats and conferences recently, and sometimes in some of them, I've actually pushed myself to be a bit more courageous, to actually start my dialogues with a song.
Wow.
And I haven't been thrown out of the room. That's great.
Yeah.
But it's a reflection and expression of how I feel like I belong there, because I
Yeah.
felt courage to be able to do that or sing out loud in
Yeah.
below
That
300.
That's cool. So a couple things. One, so about a month and a half ago, I was in Las Vegas. I was there at the Tony Hsieh Awards at Zappos headquarters. You know, Tony Hsieh obviously passed on, and the kind of preview party the night before, because this was very much in his spirit, creating a culture of belonging, but also where people could be a little silly and outside their comfort zone. They were basically doing impromptu karaoke and talent shows type of stuff, right? And so you definitely need to get. I'll make sure that you come to the next time that happens.
I better do it.
You'd be in your element for sure. So make that happen. And I love what you just said about kind of the foundation and the way that you are leading the culture and driving the culture. And I have with that as the backdrop, I do have a very tactical question. around insight for other leaders in this space right now. Obviously, your CEO and leadership has taken a strong position on people returning to the office at a time where we're balancing remote work, flexibility, hybrid. You all are currently, I'm going to say, rebellious in that regard to say, hey, we're going to be out in front saying, let's get back into an office setting.
Right.
How are you? I mean, obviously, I understand there's been a lot of research and work that's gone into those decisions. What are you at JPMorgan Chase seeing? How are you kind of balancing that kind of shift and kind of what are you hearing? What are you learning from that kind of perspective? And what have you seen over the last month? Because I think it's being that you are out in front, I think you have a view that will be helpful and formative for a lot of the broader workplace, right?
Yeah, look, it's hard to say that, anyone knows it at this
Yeah,
point. I
of
think we're
course.
all learning, right?
Yeah,
A lot of the insights we get are, I think we're listening even more,
yeah,
right? So we're taking a position because we feel like, it's, the apprenticeship model, the way that connections are really built,
yeah,
the collaboration and creativity that we want to see espoused in our values is fundamentally, some of it can happen remotely, but most of it happens when you're in
together.
person, right? And so, the data that we're getting doesn't tell us anything otherwise to shift that body language significantly, but we
Yeah,
know that flexibility and how we message it is absolutely critical,
yeah,
right? We also know that one size can't fit all 250,000 employees across the
sure.
firm. And so when we think about, our technology space, right, where we're competing with, the other big tech firms that, may have also taken different, you know, positions around, the hybrid, schedule and how they come in. We are also thinking very intentionally about our technologists as well,
Yeah,
right? And what is the level of flexibility, which is kind of what people are asking, right?
yeah,
That we give that makes us truly competitive. So we always look externally. We always are very clear about what are the roles that are most impacted. And of course, as a bank that is in the field as well, there are people that work every day in our branches, right? And
sure.
we have to recognize that there isn't really an option for remote work in
Yeah,
for certain populations of people. So I think fundamentally, anyway, my own recommendation with anyone that is thinking through this is we all keep learning as
yeah,
industry leaders. We got to keep listening
yeah,
to our employees. We can't have a one size fit all answer. And fundamentally, the world is going to shape and all congregate around the right decision in terms
sure.
of,
Yeah,
but we know that hybrid is here to stay. We embrace that. It's going to look very different for different people.
yeah. And I'll ask a follow-up question to that. Is there anything that you all are doing that you think is really kind of cutting edge in terms of talent initiatives or talent, right, in terms of doing things really kind of outside the box, right? That would be something that you see, to your point, is kind of that future best way of thinking or lessons that you're seeing that you think would be kind of, really game changers around the space. Is there anything that you feel ready or able to share in that regard?
Yeah, look, listen, I think, I'm sure my competitors are listening. So we're all competitors in the,
Yeah,
it's no longer for talent. It's just, and I always say it's like we're talent sharing the stage, right?
yeah, exactly.
But I think, I mean, we are thinking we're becoming a very product experience focused organization as a broad HR function.
Yeah,
And so, we're thinking about career experiences and internal mobility very differently. We know that the um, the key to retention, the drivers, right? Flexibility is one. I would talk a little bit about that. But the reality is that for us, all the data tells us that career advancement, right, is really top of employees' minds. And so, as we think about, internal mobility across our very wide, amazing array of opportunities, how do we enable that better with technology, with the right type of skills? We are, you know, frontline in terms of giving our employees opportunities in terms of learning externally, right? So, we've got great partnerships with guild education, where we are, very, very competitive with our tuition reimbursement programs, right? Employees can choose, sort of the different types of learning parts that they want to do, not just within the company, but outside, right? We are indexing very thoughtfully around our underserved communities as well, right? And how do we kind of help to, close the education divide systemically, well, in some of our communities as well. And so some of our, our commitments from a philanthropic perspective, but also very intentionally from a racial equity perspective as well, is quite frankly a lot of investments in education as well. So I think, from the tools and the technology to enable internal mobility, I think that we are, on that journey of best in class. And how that connects externally as well to make sure that we're attracting the right type of talent and giving them the right career experiences as we attract them into I think again, it's one of the areas that we think that we're also leading the pack in as well. So hopefully you have you have some insights when I bring you over and take you on a tour of, but ultimately I'll see that, we really put the employee experience as the center point of our evolved strategy. Prior, I think that, we will think about how we were set up to support the businesses as the business is our customer, right? Today, we think about it as the employee is our customer. And if we get that right, if we deliver the right levels of experience with empathy, right, then, we're able to truly accelerate their careers and maximize their potential.
That was a great answer. And I definitely want to dig in with you on that. I have some thoughts and this concept around education as well as access and inclusion is one that I'm also passionate about. And something I think we could really have a lot of fun. And for what it's worth, of all these interviews that I've done, this is the first time my daughter has walked into the office in the middle of
that's good. Next
generational talent is literally here in the room with us. So that's a fun one to
awesome.
share. So, yeah.
Awesome.
So Roti, thank you again. How can folks who are joining here learn about you and find you?
Oh, listen, I think LinkedIn has been the platform that has transformed all of us, right? So find me on LinkedIn. Roti Balogun is my name there. I'm also on a couple of all the social media platforms anyway, with the same name as well. But that's a good start. And then,
Awesome.
The connection and we can connect.
Well, Roti, thank you for joining us today on Rebels of the Heart. I've enjoyed the conversation as I always do when we talk. I'm looking forward to seeing what you build in your life and your career. And we're here to support you on that path, as well as many other leaders in this journey. So much respect and appreciation for you. And we will be in touch.
Thank you for having me. And I hope I can get that shirt next time we catch up.
We're going to connect offline right now and I get the people to send you one. All right.
Awesome. Have a good one. Take care. All right.